I'm convinced that you can find the most Midwestern state
Oh, yeah?
using maps.
Is that useful to you?
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
It's easy to start eliminating options. Maine is out. California is gone.
As if.
It's a question that, thanks to high school and college, I've always wondered about. What makes a state Midwestern? And I want to make it even harder. What is the most Midwestern state? And what does that even mean?
That voice just now, what was it?
We didn't hear anything.
I'm using maps and statistics to explain it. Some of them you'd expect, but some of them you never would. And I polled thousands of people to figure out which state is Midwestist. These states are going to enter into a tournament of 10 rounds to figure out which one is the most Midwestern. This debate has consumed the internet, and it should, because this is a debate about what makes up America.
Yeah.
This is my starting list of Midwest-ish states, and even this might seem a little absurd to you. Colorado? Really? But it is not so easy. On page 158 of Timothy Flint's 1833 book, he said the Middle Western states included Tennessee. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln described the Midwest as the Great Interior Region. It was bounded east by the Alleghenies, north by the British Dominion, and south by the line along which the culture of corn and cotton meets. So if you thought I was dumb for putting Colorado on this list, take it up with Lincoln.
I am the President of the United States of America, clothed in immense power.
So right here, this is one of my favorite books about the Midwest. He uses a quote that regions are best understood as dynamic processes, part of a continuous shaping of human culture. In 1980, students considered this a composite view of the Middle West. It was compiled from maps drawn by students from 32 different states. You can see at this time, this area right here is the heart of the Midwest. But then the book goes on to show that citizens from each state are constantly putting themselves in the Midwest. If you look right here, you can see that more than 90% of respondents in these sections put themselves in the Midwest. He also has this great section of maps that shows the Middle West as seen from certain states, and the boundaries of the Midwest shift accordingly. Here you have the Middle West as seen from Nebraska. Here, the Midwest as seen from North Dakota. Here you've got the Middle West as seen from New York, and the Midwest as seen from California. The definition is shifting every single time. I also love this map that he has. It's the use of Midwestern and Middle Western in the names of businesses and organizations. And you can see here that they're intensifying further over. You can find this debate throughout the 1980s. Right here, the Middle West Review included Montana and Wyoming. Modern debates are just as contentious, and there is no clarity on what a Midwestern state is. You can see here that Amazon actually splits the Midwest into a couple of regions. For logistical reasons, there's a take on the Midwest that kind of splits it into a bunch of different regions entirely. He's got little unique names for them. He calls all this part of Yankeedom. So New Yorkers and Wisconsinites are part of the same region to him. While over here you can see this red section is all part of one united region that he likes to think of as the Midlands. Is he right? I don't know, but it does make you think. The data and politics site FiveThirtyEight did a survey asking which states do you consider part of the Midwest, and they came up with a map that looked like this. You can see that some people, even in these fringe states, identify as Midwesterners. Should I take off Pennsylvania? So like right here, 81% of respondents considered Illinois to be part of the Midwest, but 10% considered Wyoming to be a solidly Midwestern state. YouGov also did a poll that had a similar result. So how do we possibly narrow this down? Okay, so I want to actually take a quick break to go get gas. So the free Upside app lets you get cash back on stuff you were already going to do, like go get gas or get groceries or go out to eat. And it's really easy to use. I'm going to show you. I'm going to sacrifice the lighting here just to give you some realism. Okay, let me screen record. Please don't judge how low my battery is. So you open up the app, right? And you can look for gas nearby you. You can look for restaurants, for groceries. So it's super easy to use too, and that's really important to me. All you have to do is you claim it, you use your normal credit card that you have it linked up to, and then you are pretty much signed up to get your cash back. Easy as that. I'm done. And that is it. I am back. Upside has given back over $1 billion to its users. So if you want to find out how much you can earn, go ahead and download the free Upside app right now. Use promo code PhilEdwards when you get there, and you will get an extra 25 cents off every gallon on your first tank of gas. Pretty awesome. It kind of adds up actually. So go ahead and give it a try. I think you'll enjoy it. Download the free Upside app, use promo code PhilEdwards, and get 25 cents back on every gallon on that first tank of gas. Thank you to them for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. At first, government designations seem like the answer, but it is actually not that simple. Go ahead and look here at the National Park Service. They organize their regional offices in ways that roughly mirror what we think of as the Midwest, but then there's Arkansas in here. This Department of the Interior map is based on watersheds, and they organize things differently too. There's the Missouri Basin, the Great Lakes, the Mississippi Basin, because they're considering physical geography, not cultural geography. The United States grid is split along different lines. And what is Midwestern is totally different here. USPS splits up the country as well. They have the central retail and delivery areas. They have cute little nicknames for each of the states because they split the states up. So Iowa becomes Hawkeye, and parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin become Northland. It is the census region for the United States that gives us a strong starting point of 12 states. And I think it's completely reasonable to consider this part of the Midwest. So I polled viewers of this channel in a showdown format in which I had one state face off against another state to see which was the most Midwestern according to your votes. I had to make some hard choices, but I feel pretty good about the results that the poll came up with. To find the most Midwestern state, we're going to use a lot more maps, and I'm going to rank the states according to the most influential maps over the course of a number of rounds. But the first ranking is going to be based off what you voted for as the most Midwestern state in my poll. Round one is done. Wisconsin's in the lead, Iowa is close after it, and Minnesota is in third. Let's start with geography. There is a fascinating section in this book where he actually mentions that it was in the 1920s when people started to split out the urban areas of the Midwest from the rural ones. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but we do have a primarily rural image of the Midwest, and I think we have to rate that in our rankings. I like this David Montgomery map because rather than being defined by state boundaries, it shows that a lot of people view the Midwest as an urban-rural thing. Now, interestingly, this is not just a map of commute times, because commute times are actually kind of evenly distributed across the country, and they get longer around cities for the most part. The map of population density looks like this. Darker it is, the denser a state is when it comes to population density. And you can see right here that the Midwest is relatively low in density. We have to include that in the rankings. Ranked, it looks like this. That sends Iowa into the lead. Climate is another obvious hallmark of Midwestern-ness. Now, you could just go with a climate map of the average temperature in January in the United States, but I think there are some more creative ways to get at this issue. This one of basements is actually kind of interesting. You see, foundations have to extend below the frost line, so basements are going to be more common in the Midwest, and they are less likely to flood. This is one of those statistics that seems super boring on its face, but then you think about it and you realize that the culture of your childhood or your teenagedom is shaped a lot by if you have a basement. But I think the most fun map to look at is this map of snow days. It shows how much snow is required to cancel school. You can see that right here, any snow is going to get you canceled in Florida. But then look at 24 inches and above. Right here around Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I went to high school, you had to get more than a foot, at least, to have school be canceled. Okay, that definitely took Minnesota into the lead. Now, flatness might seem like another obvious geographic cue for the Midwest. That is why I was so amused to find this paper. It ranked states by flatness, and hilariously, Florida is way flatter than Kansas. That said, I think you have to include flatness in any sort of ranking of the Midwest. All of our Midwestern states are in the top half, though Wisconsin is just barely there. That leaves us with Minnesota is in the lead, Iowa is second, and Wisconsin is number 3. Now, I feel like you have to bring up demographic and racial composition because so much of the imagery of the Midwest is focused around whiteness in the 1950s. However, I want to at least make the argument that being Midwestern is more complicated than that. You could argue that really being Midwestern is being German, as this map shows. It is by far the most common ethnicity. Contrast this to, say, the South, where a lot more people are English, or to areas of Texas, where Spanish heritage is a lot more common. Here is a simplified map from the US Census that shows the largest white alone group for every state. Although, interestingly, New York, New Jersey do have more Italian heritage. All this affects slang and cuisine, which we will get to later. Black Americans are largely clustered around cities in the Midwest, as this map of composition in 2000 shows. The green means a denser population of Black Americans. You can pretty clearly see Chicago and Milwaukee on the map here, and a less significant population in other areas of the Midwest, which are pretty white. In this case, literally. However, if you compare that to a map from 1900, you will see that the Great Migration from south to north created a generation of Black Americans who were distinctly Midwestern in opposition to Southern Black Americans. I want to also draw your attention to some other things that deserve inclusion and recognition. For example, Hmong Americans are very common in Minnesota and Wisconsin. There are also other unique demographic pockets in the Midwest. Like in this map of Somali population, you can see that there's a significant Somali population in Minnesota. You'll also find disproportionate representation of Arab Americans in Michigan. Go ahead and zoom in. You can see right here, you have a pretty large Arab American population, especially considering the rest of the country and the rest of the Midwest. You can see that the American Indian tribes in this region are pretty heterogeneous, and they're different, of course, from the ones on the West and the East Coast. I'm not trying to persuade you that the Midwest isn't white. I'm just trying to say that to fully capture the story of the Midwest, you have to go beyond that white imagery that is so commonly associated with it. If you actually look at the stats of the least diverse states, you'll find that Maine, West Virginia, Vermont, and New Hampshire are much less diverse than most of these Midwestern states. So whiteness is really more of a New England thing than it is a Midwestern thing. However, there are a lot of Midwestern states in that top half. Ranked here from least diverse to most, we have our states. All right, let's see the standings. It is neck and neck right now between Minnesota and Iowa.
Do you want an apple? Or do you want an orange? That's democracy.
So as a counterpoint to that lack of diversity, I want to highlight democratic ideals, which is a big part of Midwestern identity.
I also like bananas.
Exactly.
Go ahead and look at this off-year election map in 2022. It shows turnout. And you can see that there is definitely a cluster of higher turnout in the Midwest in elections. And remember, this is in 2022, so it's a year that wasn't even a big election year. The Midwest overrepresents when it comes to showing up at the polls. Now, because some states might have had more important elections that year than other years, I'm going to use the 2024 map and the according rankings to figure out which Midwestern states are the most interested in politics. Those rankings are... Okay. Boom. Minnesota's looking strong, folks, but we've got a few more rounds to go, and we're getting to some important stuff. For fun, I had you rank the top Midwestern foods, and there is some educational stuff here. I want to tell you why I'm not going to have cheese be a Midwestern ranking, because this map right here actually led me to believe that cheese isn't quite as Midwestern as we think. It shows cheese production by state, And as you would expect, Wisconsin is the biggest, but California right here is pretty close to the top. It easily beats out Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio, and Illinois. And even New York produces more cheese than, say, Minnesota. So I'm not convinced that cheese production is a universally Midwestern thing. I think it really is a Wisconsin phenomenon. The butter burger is largely another Wisconsinism. A great proxy for that is locations at the Culver's chain, which sells butter burgers and also custard. You can see that those are definitely clustered in the Midwest, but largely in Wisconsin. Other local delicacies like runza are isolated in Nebraska. Look at this map of runza locations. There's definitely something Midwestern going on here, but it's largely a Nebraska phenomenon. Casserole is probably a reflection of canned food popularity, while fish fries are definitely about Catholicism. This map shows America's most Catholic states, and you can see that there is a bit of a cluster here in the Midwest, though it pales in comparison to New York. So I don't think Catholicism is a particularly Midwestern thing. This green right here is Lutheran. So if anything, Midwesterners are more likely to be Lutheran.
That's why we Lutherans use grape Kool-Aid for the blood of Christ.
But I do think that the third most Midwestern food, corn, leads us somewhere important.
Is this heaven? No. It's Iowa.
Funnily enough, you can see the representation of corn when you look at maps of ethanol using states. Look, this is number of public E85 ethanol stations, but we can certainly be more direct than that. There's a bunch of different ways you could slice this, but this map shows corn for grain. Iowa's at the top, Illinois is second, and Nebraska is third when it comes to corn. After that, Minnesota and Iowa are tied, my friends. Next, we've got to talk about soybeans. Okay, so here is planted acreage by county. I'm picking this because I think it really reflects how Midwestern a state seems, how much of this acreage is devoted to soybeans. Now, you can see right here that my choice to exclude North Dakota is a little bit unfair because there's a lot of soybean planted in North Dakota. Folks, Iowa just went into the lead, but we also have to include at least a little bit about where people eat. I am choosing Dairy Queen. This is Warren Buffett's favorite restaurant, supposedly, and it is just the most Midwestern universal chain. We need to create an index of people who know that you can turn a blizzard upside down. So here is the map of the number of DQ locations in every state. You can see that there's definitely a Midwestern cluster here, but we need to correct this for population because otherwise Texas would take it away. You find that the Midwest does have more Dairy Queens per person than a lot of other places, and you come up with this ranking. Minnesota, Iowa, and Indiana take the lead. 75 to 75 right now. This is crazy. Slang is where a lot of these other things meet. I had you rank the most Midwestern slang. Pop versus soda is up there, and that will contribute to our rankings. But before I get to that, I want to get into the slang that defines the Midwest. And there are lots of fascinating little examples that aren't pan-Midwest, but they're super interesting. I want to show you this hilarious map. It is a map of where they say duck, duck, goose or duck, duck, gray duck. There are a ton of fascinating things like this. Linguists have a bunch of tools that split up the United States. Here is how they split up what they call the Midwest, but they agree that this is a sort of slippery concept. So this map right here shows the relative high of AE in bat, bad, etc. So you're thinking like bat, bad versus bat or bad. There was a bat in my garage, like that kind of thing. Right here, they've mapped what they consider to be the dialects of the North and the Midland, and you can see that they've actually split up these middle areas from more northern areas, which have linguistic trends that are similar to other northern parts of the United States. I want to show you a little about this book. This is a really fun book. It's called Speaking American by Josh Katz, and it maps out a bunch of dialectical data across the United States. So these are the areas that say aunt, and these are the ones that say aunt. There are other fun Midwesternisms in here that are less quantifiable, like where they ask, "You coming with?" and where they don't ask that. You can see that it's definitely a Midwestern thing. But of course, the most famous, distinctly Midwestern thing is pop versus soda. So popversussoda.com has a really detailed map of where they say pop or soda. The green and yellow here is tilting towards pop, whereas the pink and blue are soda, and then also Coke down here in the South. So you can see here in the Midwest, it is definitely disproportionately pop, though fascinatingly in Wisconsin, you're going to find a little more soda. After tens of thousands of submissions, it not only includes this map of pop versus soda, but also statistics on what people in each state said. Throughout this, I've been surprised to see how closely the quantitative measurements mirror the qualitative measurements that you all made when voting in the poll. And it goes to show that our subjective experience of the world, the way that things feel, really is affected by stuff like geography and immigration and public policy.
You discover the real secret of America right here in the Middle West. Don't you see what I mean?
It can seem boring, but then I think back on experiences in my life. I remember when we first moved to Wisconsin and you could order brats at McDonald's. Now I understand that not just as something that happened to me, but as a reflection of Wisconsin's German heritage. Or when I went down the street and saw that there was a church that offered German language services. Or when I worked as a waiter and the Friday night fish fries were always crowded. And having moved to Wisconsin from the South, I'd never even heard of a fish fry before. It's more serious than that too. Why was my high school so much whiter than the high school that I'd gone to in the South? Or why did my college have this thing called the Wisconsin Idea, where they cared a lot about engaging with the outside world? All of these abstract things are tied to real trends that you can map and see in the Midwest. I'm going to go ahead and submit the last round. All right, we have an updated ranking. Minnesota, 85 to 83. Nebraska has come in third at 63. And Missouri is the least Midwestern. Boom! All right, that is it for this one. I'm about to shoot the thumbnail, but I would love to know what you think. Did I find the Midwestest state? I'll admit it was a little bittersweet for me to see Wisconsin lose, and also Iowa. I thought Iowa was going to take it away, but I did kind of convince myself with the methodology. But I'd love to know your tweaks, improvements, and of course any debates. I will try to chime in as well. If you haven't been here before, I have a newsletter that I put out with every video, and it gets into something that I couldn't get into in the video proper. It's hosted on Patreon, but it is free to check out. You just click on over. It's got all my sources for this video. There are a lot. And it also has an article about one book that I ended up cutting out, but I thought it was really funny. It's a dictionary of Upper Midwest English. So it's narrowed in on that Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota type region, but there's a lot of funny slang in there, and I wanted to show you a few maps from that. So click on over there. Again, free to check out. And for paid subscribers, normally I do a reaction video, but this week I think I'm going to do just kind of a detailed analysis of how I put this together, because it involved a bunch of different weird moving pieces. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and okay there, don't you know? See you later. All right, bye.